Chapter 1. Caden. I excused myself and rose from the warmth of Grayle's arms, my feet on the rug, then the hardwood floor, as he executed an uncomfortable turn with his body facing the phone on the table near the lamp. Quickly, he swung his long legs around to the side of the bed and sat up straight. Turning around, I saw Gray take in a full breath and exhale, and place his hand to his forehead. I heard him blow out a hard breath and say, "What the fuck, Austin?" I closed the restroom door behind me and stared at the door, wondering how Gray was going to handle all of this. There wasn't any need to listen, because I didn't want to hear any more of that conversation, because I could imagine the rest. I wanted to pretend that I didn't hear anything at all, but I couldn't close my mind and ears. I had to face it just like Gray would face Austin's cheating and cover-ups. I heard there was a baby involved. Who could forget that? Somehow I knew what the outcome would be between me and Gray. I could imagine how Grayle's heart bounded at the news, and the happiness he felt alongside the pain. The time I spent with Gray's father, he'd said how much Gray wanted to be a father, and I should promise that if I was with Gray that we should adopt. I had assured Mr. Meadows I would indeed adopt if that made Gray happy, but first there had to be a relationship, and it appeared it wasn't getting off the ground the way things were going. Austin, in his fucked up way, had given Gray what he'd wanted all his life. Here was Gray's chance to have the child he'd always desired, and here was my chance to lose the man I'd always needed. I could write my epitaph this very moment. Here lies Caden Walker, who died of a broken heart. Where was my chance to start a new life with Grayle, where he and I would do all the things we could have wanted together, adopt children, buy a home, travel to places I'd never been and always wanted to see with the man I loved? We could have done all those things after we'd gotten to know each other. That was all dashed to hell now, because I knew Gray the way I knew my body. He would stay with Austin because of the child, to safeguard that the child was cared for properly, because he wanted to be part of the child's life, simply because Austin was the father. When I stepped into the shower and turned it on, I knew there wasn't enough water to wash away this uncanny feeling, this pain in my stomach, this empty feeling in my gut I'd brought along with me into the shower stall. The weird feeling that Austin had won. All kinds of thoughts raced through my head, and my heart beat unevenly in my chest since I couldn't unhear that conversation, even if I wanted. Couldn't I stop time where I could go back and do something different that would prevent this from happening to me? No, I'm afraid not, my mother had said when I'd asked her when I was a child, and I couldn't tell the difference in reality and fantasy. She explained to me that there wasn't anything to reverse time where I could return to being a baby again, because I didn't want to accept that I was growing up and I had to go to school without her. Dousing my body with Gray's shower gel only made me feel worse. It smelled like him, a clean smell, and I wanted him here with me in this shower. I wanted to be the one laughing and playing with him, soaping his back. When I thought we'd finally connected and he loved me, I had another hurdle to jump. I'd said to Austin that I knew how to compete for a man I wanted. It was just conversation. Boasting from a young man who hadn't really competed for anything except in my dreams, and now I would have to compete for real, and I'd better be up to the task. I couldn't stay in the shower any longer, because I thought I'd been in here hiding from the truth for about a half an hour. "Get the fuck out of here," I mumbled. "And face your biggest opponent, a man who's in love with having a family at the cost of our relationship." I forced myself to step out on the cold tiled floor, and I was just reaching for a towel when Gray entered and sat on the bench in the corner of this more than spacious bathroom. I looked around and imagined him sneaking into his parents' room like I had done when I was a child, when my mother had caught me and warned me to stay out of their bathroom. I went back nonetheless and found my father's shaving cream and razor and tried to shave, and ended up cutting my chin. I still had that scar, hidden by the scarce hair that eventually grew and covered the injury. Glancing into the mirror, trying to think of something to talk to Grayle about, because it appeared that he wasn't going to say anything to give me comfort or bring an end to this devastating silence we were both shackled with. The room was quiet as a thief in the night, a thief who had reached and pulled out the most precious thing Gray possessed, his heart he'd finally given to me. Gray sat staring up at me with little or no expression. Was he waiting for me to break the silence? I didn't know, and I didn't care. Looking around, I opened a cabinet, looking for something to shave the blonde hair on my chin, which was hardly noticeable. I could have done without a shave today, but I had to say or do something because it had become awkward, because we were both naked and he was just staring at me, and I wished I knew what he was thinking. I reached for a towel because of an uncomfortable feeling. I felt as if he was studying my body to see if I was worthy to be with him. Hell no, I wasn't worthy. No man was worthy enough to deserve a man like Grayle, with his honesty, caring ways, and being too beautiful to be believed. Grayle stood after watching me wrap the towel around my middle. I wanted to hide from him. I wasn't used to a man watching me, or me being naked when we weren't having sex. At first it felt natural, and then it felt disturbing. I turned to Gray, hoping he'd say something. I couldn't think of anything to say, and it should have been him who would break the silence. He just stared as if he wasn't really seeing me. Finally, I said, "Do you have any extra disposable razors?" Gray blinked and stood, then walked behind me and focused on me in the mirror. Then he reached to the side as he stood behind me. I felt his warm breath against my shoulder when he opened the cabinet and retrieved a disposable razor. He handed it to me and held one in his hand for himself. Without a word between us, his silence was unbearable, because it filled this room with uncertainty. But in my head there was an orchestra, and the cembalist kept banging constantly. I couldn't take it any longer. "Are you going to tell me what's going on, or do I have to guess?" I snapped. Gray turned with a purpose and stated, "There's nothing to say, except there's a woman who's having a baby soon, and she can't find the father, and she's threatening to bring the baby to me." Oh fuck. Did I hear him right? Why would she do that? I turned abruptly to face him, instead of looking in the mirror. Why not? I'm Austin's partner, and I live with him, and we have a home together. Grayle can't be serious, I wondered, meeting his empty blue eyes. However, from my talks with his father, he was serious, and he would accept Austin's child. His painful expression signaled to me that he felt responsible for the baby. I thought he would feel that way, but didn't want to admit it until I knew. Now I knew. I thought it was over between you and Austin, because knowing you would never sleep with me if it wasn't. Now the father is missing in action, as he usually is, and you're going to be responsible for a baby. What would you have me do? She wants to give the baby up for adoption, and the child is Austin's. Let Austin take care of the baby. Let him take the responsibility with whomever he's fucking around with. Why do you need to do that? I watched Gray's forehead furrow and his lips quiver, and tears pooled in his eyes, making them glassy. Then he spoke in a soft tone, "I've wanted a child all my life, and I can have one now. I'm almost 40 and my sperm count is low. I can't get a surrogate to have a baby for me." But what about me? I found myself whining. "Do you want the responsibility of a child now?" he questioned. "You're 25. I don't know yet. I'm 22. Oh, I'd fucked up. Here I was lying to Grayle about my age, hoping he'd accept me if I raised my age a few years. My father said that you might as well tell the truth, because lies didn't stay hidden for long. You either told on yourself because you'd forgotten that you'd lied. I should have listened to my father." Grayle's eyes narrowed, and he placed the razor down, wiped his face, and said, "You told me you were 25. You've been lying about your age all along. You can hardly call yourself a man." I should have gotten angry and said something, but now wasn't the time. I was wrong, and I would own up to that. I placed my hand on Grayle's arm, and he calmed. His brow no longer furrowed. I wanted you, and if I'd revealed my true age, you'd have never given me a chance to be with you, let alone make love to you." "You're fucking right about that," he said with a low, uncontrolled and stormy voice. He paced around the bathroom saying, "I'm letting a boy fuck me? I should have my head examined." Gail questioned in disbelief with disgust dripping from each word. He looked over at me, bit his lip, then raked his fingers through his sexy, unruly hair. One more glance my way, and with a shake of his head, he threw his face towel down on the counter and marched out, leaving me inside the room. I found my clothes near the hamper and grabbed them with a quick swoop of my hand, and trotted behind Gray to plead my case. "I meant no harm, Gray, when I lied to you. I didn't fuck you. I made love to you. It's the way you desired. I needed you like you needed me, and I hoped you'd realize it was foolish on your part to think that I was too young for you," I admitted. Maybe a little too much coming clean on my part. I should have held back and given him time to digest all that had happened in a matter of an hour. His partner was having a baby, and his boyfriend was 22. "The only fool here is me," Gray stammered. He pivoted around, and we locked eyes. We stood together, our bodies on fire, currents flowing between us, and our breathing accelerating at the thought of what I'd done to Gray and how he'd made me feel. How could I go back to what it was before our bodies connected? I thought we had gotten past all the "you're too young" shit and moved on to "I love you, Caden, and nothing will come between us ever again," but apparently I was wrong. Oh, so wrong, because Gray hadn't gotten over his aversion to men younger than himself, who had turned him off the idea that a man of legal age still wasn't acceptable, who had damaged this man to the point that he could want me and desire me, and still he wouldn't accept me because I was only 22. I wanted to ask him, but now wasn't the time. "You knew how I felt about you being too young for me, and still you pursued me to the point that you would confess to Austin that you were going to have me at any cost." He raised up his hands. "I can't do this, Caden. I'm more than 15 years older than you. What were you thinking?" "That I love you, and you loved me," I said, mumbling in a soft voice, my eyes lowered like a child who had broken something. I walked up to Grayle to wrap my hands around his perfect waist, but he moved away from me, then turned to face me. Looking in my eyes, he said, "I love you too, Cade, but you're too young to have to deal with this, and I can't turn my back on the woman or her baby because she's having Austin's child. She said that she can't afford to raise the baby, and Austin made her promises, and he has no intention of keeping those promises. She said Austin promised that when he'd returned from his trip to Nevermore, he'd confess to me about their affair, and he'd get an apartment for the two of them, and he'd be there with her when she gave birth." As Gray's eyes darted and he appeared to search around his bedroom for answers, I had one thing on my mind. Gray walked away, his back to me as he fingered some pictures, picked them up and looked at each one, and then placed them back on the shelf that contained books and pictures. It was Austin, all right, who lied to everyone, and especially to Grayle. He was the one who had fucked up my life, even as he was having a fun time fucking around on Grayle, and now he was planning on giving Grayle what he'd always wanted, a child to raise. I could see it clear now. That was the only way he could hold on to Gray. He knew Gray's weakness, and I didn't. He'd had enough time to learn about Gray, and how he felt about a home and children. "What do you want of me, Gray? Just ask and I'll do anything," I pleaded.